Hello and welcome to this video, which is all about how do we answer the questions in the Kenilworth Castle paper, how we're going to make sure we smash this exam. So we're going to go through some really practical advice, some step-by-step approaches. Well done for listening. Let's go. So first of all, a few kind of key core messages that you've got to remember in the heat of the exam. Don't rush things. 4 key things. Number 1, obvious points, but make sure you really read carefully the questions and identify exactly what it is asking you to do. Often it will be 2 different things. So it's really important you take the time, you reword it in your mind, you read it again. There may be multiple things you've got to do. Check what it is it's asking you. And then you're going to start to plan and think about writing 3 different points in 3 different paragraphs. That's going to be your structure. And you're going to try and plan first. You get a lot of time in this exam to prepare, to think about how you're going to write your answer, what are your 3 different points going to be before you start writing. Now, don't panic if you can't think of 3 really good points. Do 2 really good ones, you can still get a great grade. And really just focus on answering the question as best you can. Much better to write 2 really good points than trying to rush through 3. As you're writing, focus on linking back to the question, check you fully answered it, try and catch yourself, try and not waffle too much, keep on linking back. And certainly before you move on to another paragraph, think, can I explain a tiny bit more? Can I link back further to the question? And then for each question, for every paragraph, you are going to use physical features. Okay? You must use physical features in each paragraph to support the points you're making. That is your route to a great grade. Now, we are going to look at some specific questions in a moment, but before that, I'd like to look at this exam paper from 2025 and just catch a couple of really key things. So first of all, it says you must clearly state the name of the site, that's Kenilworth, at the start of each answer. So both of your answers, you've got to write Kenilworth Castle. Simple thing, but also an easy thing to miss if you're rushing through. And then it tells you you've got to clearly state the specific times in your site's history you're writing about. So that might be military or palatial, or it might be even more specific, like the time of King John. It might be even more specific than that, like a date, 1266, in the military era, and the Great Siege. You're going to get 3 questions, and you answer 2 of them. So choose wisely, choose carefully, don't rush your choice. There might be a question that you think, oh, I don't get that. But if you read it again, you're like, oh, actually, wait, I know this and this and this. So don't rush your choice. Think really carefully. What can I write about? Which questions have I got the most to say about? And do your planning to check you do know how to answer those questions before you start writing. And then a final thing on a kind of a general point is that each question has 5 marks for spelling, punctuation, grammar, and use of specialist terminology. So that is actually 20% of the whole paper. So be really careful. Don't rush that. Catch your spelling, simple punctuation, full stops, capital letters, commas, and the grammar, capital letters for people's names, for Kenilworth. Try and take particular care of that because there are some easy marks on offer there. Okay. Let's look at a few questions and try and explore some of the key things we've got to remember and some of the problems that can be posed by this exam paper. So here's the first question from the 2025 paper, and it did catch a few people out. It says, imagine you are a guide at your site. Now that's a literal instruction. It's telling you, imagine you are a guide. And it then tells you, if you wanted visitors to understand something. So it's really inviting you to talk as if you are a guide. So you've got to imagine, if you are answering a question like this, okay, I'm a guide, I've got visitors in front of me, what am I going to tell them? Now, the question then goes on to say, the visitors need to understand how people first used the site. Be careful with this. First used the site, that means the first 10, 20, maximum 30 years. So it does not mean King John, it does not mean the Great Siege. First used the site are the early decades at most. So how did people first use it? You want visitors to understand that. It's asking you which features of the site, all the surroundings. So you could talk about buildings, remains. You could also talk about the local countryside. Which things would you point out to the visitors to help them understand this? And crucially, why? So that final bit I've underlined in red is the sort of thing that might catch someone out. You've got to do all parts of the question. So if I'm writing an answer to this, I'm going to try and do exactly what the question is asking me. Here we go. Here's how I'd start it out. Firstly, to help visitors understand how people first used the site, I would point out. So I'm talking as if it's me. I am the guide. That's what the question is asking me. I would point out, well, what would be the best feature, the best building to show them? Of course, hope you're thinking the same. It would be the Great Tower, because that's the first building that was there. So I'm going to point out the Great Tower. Now I need to explain how that would help them understand how it was first used and why it would do that, what I would tell them. So here's how I might continue. This was the first building that Geoffrey de Clinton built when Kenilworth was first established in the 1120s. I'm showing off some knowledge there. I would especially draw visitors' attention to the 4.3 metre thick walls because then I can explain how that would help visitors understand that this was a defensive military castle. Then also with the Great Tower, I might say, I would also show where the staircases leading up to the upper floor would be, as this would help explain. And I'm just thinking about different things I could show, and I'm trying to really imagine I'm there at Kenilworth and I'm pointing, showing people things, and I'm telling them, I'm helping them understand what that tells you about how people first used the site. Okay, so read questions carefully, and don't get tricked by kind of like a weird question like this. Just go along with it. This is inviting you to talk as if you were a guide. Okay, another question I've just picked out that could trip people up. This one says, explain the reasons why people first used your site within its surroundings. So some students answered this question by just explaining why people first created it. If they just do that, you're going to get a very low mark because you've got to talk about this bit within its surroundings. So that means why on a natural hill? Why with a valley nearby? Why with the rivers? Why close to Warwick? Okay, so you've got to read the question and focus on all the different parts of it, okay, to successfully answer these questions. Okay, so there are some kind of general things to look out for. I thought what we should do next is look at a question and just kind of try and structure a bit more of how a paragraph can look. So here's a good, quite simple question. It's just got one thing it asks you to do. Explain why your site has changed over time. Not what changed, right? Not how it changed, but why it changed. So really think about that before writing. And to help us, as I've been going over again and again, over and over, you've got to think about your first sentences because that's going to help you kind of focus your answer. So why has the site changed over time? Okay, my first sentence needs to be, one reason why the castle has changed over time is, and I'm going to give my reason. It's changed over time because the owners of it has changed, because England has been changing. Sometimes it's violent, sometimes it's peaceful. It's changed over time because people have used it in different ways, either for living in or for political movements. So we give the reason. Please note that so far I haven't given my example. So I'm not starting by saying one reason why the castle has changed over time is the Great Siege of 1266. That's an example of a bigger point that I need to make first. I then move on to the example. A good example of this is when we give a specific example of a time when the castle changed. Then we've got to remember, let's come to the physical features. So I'm going to talk about one or two physical features, demonstrate these changes by, and then I'm going to show off my knowledge. I'm going to try and talk about the physical features, give some details of those, and I'm going to keep on linking back to the question about why the site was changing. That's what I'm trying to prove, why it was changing, and my physical features can help support that. Okay, well done. Keep going. Thank you for listening and watching so far. Let's look at two final questions and try and just explore these skills. Again, hopefully this feels a bit repetitive. That's a good thing. Let's make sure we've really got this down. So two more things we're going to look at. Here is a question we're going to break down and again focus on how we start our answers. So let's read through the question really carefully together. What challenges are there when trying to understand the appearance of your site? So let's just pause there. Okay, the challenges, what is difficult when trying to understand the appearance. So what is difficult about trying to imagine what it looked like when it was first created? So similar to the point we made about the previous question, first created, that's talking about the 1120s. That's talking about Geoffrey de Clinton. So what are the problems? What are the difficulties for us in trying to imagine, trying to understand what it looks like then? And second part of the question, how could someone overcome these challenges? So I'm going to really think before I start writing, how is each of my sentences, how is each of my paragraphs going to begin? And we do it in this kind of formulaic way. Let's go. First one. One challenge when trying to understand what Kenilworth looked like when it was first created is, and I'm going to explain the challenge. Then I've got to remember, okay, there was two parts of these questions, two parts of this question. This would be overcome by, and I'll explain how that challenge could be overcome. Now, as I'm doing that, I'm trying to talk about physical features, I'm showing off some of my own knowledge as I go through. And then, and I know this can feel boring, and if you want to try and reword it and make it more, I suppose more like academic, by all means, but the simple structure works. So we could start our second paragraph by saying, a second challenge for understanding the appearance of Kenilworth when it was first built in the 1120s is that. We give another reason, another challenge, another thing that makes it difficult. And then again, we come back and say this could be overcome by. We remember to talk about physical features, and then we do the exact same thing again. Finally, another challenge or a final challenge, or this is the challenge. We explain it, and we say how it could be overcome. We use a physical feature, and then we're done. Now, if you've got loads of time, a little introduction, a conclusion, wrapping it all up is great. But where you pick up your marks here are for the number of well-explained paragraphs that answer the question. So 3 great paragraphs is going to get you right up there. 2 great paragraphs is going to get you a really good mark. And even just 1 really well-written paragraph is going to get you a decent grade. Okay, we come to the end of the video. And for those of you still watching, well done for keeping on going. We're going to do one last question, and this time I'm going to show you a paragraph, a full paragraph to it. So let's read the last question then. Choose one period. Okay, so we've got to choose military or palatial. One period. How far, so we're going to have to make a judgment here. Is it very far? Is it quite far? Is it significant? Not very far? How far do the physical remains, remember that means the ruins, so how far do the ruins at your site at Kenilworth reveal, show us, help us to understand the attitudes and values of people at that time? So basically, we can reword the question in our minds. Okay, basically it's asking us, do the ruins of Kenilworth help to show us what people cared about, what people were interested in, what was important to people during the palatial era? That's what we're basically being asked. So you're going to make a plan. You're going to try and find 3 ways that the physical remains can help reveal what people cared about and thought about. You're going to think carefully, okay, what could I say more about military or palatial here? And then you're going to start writing. Let's have a look at what I have suggested here for a first paragraph. So the physical remains of Kenilworth significantly reveal the attitudes and values of people living during the palatial period. So straight away, I've told the examiner what period I'm talking about. I've used words from the question. Let's start making some points. Firstly, a huge amount is revealed. I'm answering the question. A huge amount is revealed by looking at the physical remains of the Great Hall, built by John of Gaunt in the 1370s. So that's my first point. We can learn a lot by looking at the Great Hall. As can still be seen today, using this idea of physical remains, as can still be seen today, this building was very grand and beautiful. You can still see very tall windows around the hall, huge fireplaces, and room on the walls for expensive foreign tapestries. These reveal, so I'm linking back to the question, these reveal the wealth of people like John of Gaunt and show that power and respect was gained not through fighting and military buildings, but through displays of wealth and culture during this period. So that's me telling the examiner that from the Great Hall, we can work out, we can have revealed to us what was important, what gave you power, the attitudes, what people respected. So wealth and culture. Now I'm going to go on to try and explain a bit more using some more of my own knowledge. The hall would have been used for entertaining the rich and powerful of England, and there would have been music, feasts, and dancing. There are clues of all these things in the physical remains, such as the places for people to sit around the windows and the decorations on the entranceway. So trying to go into the features, not just talk about the Great Hall as just by itself, going to go into the details of the Great Hall. These reveal the things which people enjoyed and respected at this time, and the kind of culture that they valued. So the highlighting here shows you which part of the question I am referencing back to. So I'm keeping on using words from the question. I'm keeping on checking, okay, can I explain more? Can I make sure I've proven that this does reveal what people cared about and thought about and valued? Again, got this focus of a physical feature helping me out. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. Well done for watching. Good luck in your questions. Stay calm, stay slow, and work through the process that we have worked on here. Particular focus on those first sentences of each paragraph to help keep your answer really focused.